Grandfather, I'm sorry, but I can't live as your doll. A moment later, she handed her sketch to the design team leader. Instead of reducing the number of columns, what if we change the dome structure to a honeycomb-shaped hexagon? It's one of the most stable structures in nature. This way, we can distribute the load throughout the entire structure and ensure stability with a minimal number of columns. And if we embed translucent solar cells in each glass panel, we can solve the lighting and energy problems simultaneously. We can regulate natural light for optimal plant growth during the day and use the self-generated electricity to light the garden at night. She climbed over the railing and grabbed the rope. The rough texture of the fabric felt raw against her palms. Yujin took a deep breath and carefully began to lower herself. The beginning was smooth. Her arms and legs screamed, but her willpower held strong. One floor, then another. The wind whipped at her hair, and the city's hum buzzed in her ears. When her explanation was over, a heavy silence fell in the study. The design team leader could not take his eyes off her sketch. The cynical expression on his face disappeared, replaced by surprise and confusion. The idea Yujin proposed was a perfect solution to all the problems they had been agonizing over for months. It wasn't just an alternative, it was an innovation that surpassed the original design. After she'd descended some distance, one of the knots suddenly tightened with a worrying creak. Yujin's heart plummeted. She stopped moving, holding her breath as she hung there. Cold sweat dripped down her back. Had she miscalculated? Or had she made a mistake in her haste? This is... Just as anxiety overwhelmed her, she heard a sound from the floor below. Someone was opening the balcony door. Yujin instinctively pressed herself against the wall. Please, don't let them see me. Was it a bodyguard or a hotel employee? If anyone discovered her, the entire plan would be ruined. He couldn't find the words. The other executives also began to whisper amongst themselves. It was then that her foot slipped, and she lost her balance. Ah! A short scream escaped her lips. She lost her grip on the rope. Yujin's body plunged into the air. As she squeezed her eyes shut, a torrent of thoughts flashed through her mind. Is this how it ends? So pointlessly. The dream. The freedom. Everything. A faint smile appeared on Jihoon's lips as he watched them. He stood up and gently put his arm around Yujin's shoulder. Tomorrow morning, I will convene a board meeting. I will create a space for Miss Han Yujin to present this idea herself. Everyone needs to see her talent firsthand. But the terrifying impact she expected never came. Instead, something hard and strong caught her. When she slowly opened her eyes in surprise, she was in the arms of a man. The next day, in the TK Group's boardroom, where all the top executives were gathered, Yujin stood nervously in front of the podium. Behind her, a 3D simulation video she had created all night was playing on the huge screen. The atmosphere in the boardroom was icy. Most of the directors looked at her with disapproval, considering her a parachute or a puppet of the chairman. The man was standing on the balcony on the floor below. He was the source of the sound she had just heard. He was dressed in a black shirt, and his sharp eyes, visible through his disheveled hair, were striking. He seemed surprised by the sudden situation but showed no sign of panic. Instead, his gaze was cold and sharp, as if it could see through everything. As he scrutinized Yujin, "Good morning. My name is Han Yujin. From now on, I will propose a new design for the Elysian Complex's atrium, the Garden of Elysium." Kang Ji-hoon, the head of TK Group, a man known as the Ice Emperor for his cool-headed judgment and ruthless business acumen. He had merely come out to the balcony for some fresh air to clear his complicated mind. And then, a woman fell from the sky, and right into his arms. She began her presentation in a trembling voice, but the moment her design unfolded on the screen, the air in the boardroom changed instantly. Sunlight poured through the honeycomb-shaped dome, and the sight of a lush garden stretching out in a vast, column-free space was truly magnificent. It was the very design everyone had dreamed of, but no one had been able to implement. A perfect harmony of technology and art. Their eyes met in the air. Yujin's heart began to pound for a different reason. The man's embrace was surprisingly steady, and the faint, cool scent from his body pierced through her chaotic thoughts. Yujin calmly explained the philosophy and technical principles behind her design: structural stability, energy efficiency, and aesthetic value. Her presentation was flawless. The skeptical eyes of the directors slowly turned into looks of admiration. Sharp questions were thrown at her, but Yujin, unfazed, answered them logically based on her vast knowledge. "Are you all right?" When the presentation ended, no one spoke for a while. Everyone was overwhelmed by the breathtaking sight on the screen. The silence was finally broken by the very design team leader who had dismissed her the day before. The man's low, calm voice broke the silence. There was almost no emotion in his voice. Yet strangely, it gave Yujin more stability than any words of comfort could. He stood up and bowed deeply toward Yujin. I was foolish. Ms. Han Yujin's design is perfect. No, it's beyond perfect. I sincerely ask you to lead this project. Yujin couldn't say a word. She just stared blankly into the eyes of the man holding her. In the pitch-black night, on a dizzying 44th floor balcony, the fateful encounter between a woman fleeing a political marriage and a man at the pinnacle of the world had begun. From above, the faint voices of bodyguards searching for her started to echo. The situation was explosive. Her escape was not over. No, it was just entering a new phase. At his sincere apology and recognition, thunderous applause finally erupted in the boardroom. It was a pure sign of respect and admiration for architect Han Yujin, not the chairman's wife. Yujin's eyes welled up with emotion. Kang Ji-hoon's arms were as solid as rock. In his embrace, Han Yujin momentarily forgot everything. The fear of her dizzying fall, the tension of her desperate escape, and the feeling that she was being instantly freed from everything that had been suffocating her. But the peace lasted only for a fleeting moment. Faint sounds from the floor above pulled her back to reality. From that day on, with the unanimous consent of the board, Kang Ji-hoon officially appointed Yujin as the general director of the Elysian Complex project. She was given her own office on the top floor of the TK Group headquarters, and a team of top-tier professionals was assembled under her direct command. Miss, where are you? Check the balcony side. Yujin was no longer hiding as someone's wife or granddaughter. She stood tall in the world with her own name and skills. With the wings of her suppressed dreams spread wide, she shone more brilliantly than anyone else. It was the bodyguards' voices. Their voices were getting closer, and soon, a powerful flashlight beam sliced through the air, illuminating the space below. Yujin's heart sank again. If she was caught here, everything would be over. She instinctively struggled to get out of Ji-hoon's arms. Ji-hoon watched her office from his own, a contented smile on his face. He was certain that making her his wife was the best deal and choice of his life. Their relationship had started as a contract, but now, a warm, nameless emotion was blossoming in his heart, along with a deep respect for her. Let go quickly. But the stronger the light, the deeper the shadow. The existence of Yujin, who was soaring brilliantly in the spotlight, was being captured even more clearly in the eyes of Lee Min-hyuk, who was sharpening the knife of revenge in the darkness. His next target was now clear. It was not TK Group, but Han Yujin herself. But Ji-hoon did not let her go. Instead, he tightened the arm around her waist, pulling her closer to him. His cold gaze was not on Yujin, but on the commotion above. In an instant, he grasped the essence of the situation, not knowing if this woman was an intruder, a spy, or just someone who had gone mad. The clumsy rope made of torn sheets and curtains, her desperate but terrified eyes, and the urgent movements from the floor above. All these pieces came together to form a clear picture in his mind. As the Elysian Complex project got into full swing, Han Yujin and Kang Ji-hoon became busier than ever. They were no longer just a contract couple. They were the perfect partners running toward the shared goal of the project's success, the people who inspired each other the most. The lights in Yujin's and Ji-hoon's offices stayed on late into the night, and they constantly went back and forth between their offices to share ideas and work through the night together. Shh. The longer they spent together, the more they discovered new sides of each other. Yujin learned that Ji-hoon was not just a cold and calculating businessman. He listened carefully to every small idea from his employees, encouraged seemingly impossible challenges, and was a true leader who took full responsibility in crucial moments, especially in his respect for her design and his role as a strong support system, allowing her to fully express her talent. Yujin felt a deep sense of trust and excitement. His low whisper resonated in Yujin's ear. That single, short word had a strange power. Yujin's struggles stopped for a moment. Ji-hoon did not miss the opportunity, holding her as he swiftly moved inside his suite. As he closed the glass door to the balcony, the flashlight beam sharply swept past the exact spot they had just been in. It was a close call. Ji-hoon also couldn't take his eyes off Yujin as she was engrossed in her work. Sometimes, She would fall asleep at her desk from exhaustion after working all night, or she would fret like a child over a small problem. But when faced with important project decisions, she displayed a sharp and decisive charisma like no other. Her multifaceted personality was seeping into his heart, as cold as ice, and changing him. He no longer suppressed his emotions. It had become a natural part of his daily routine to hand her a warm cup of coffee when she was tired and to quietly place his jacket over her when she fell asleep. Inside the suite, a profound silence completely separated them from the commotion outside. Only then did Jihoon set Yujin down on the floor. Her legs, suddenly on solid ground, gave way, and she stumbled. She would have collapsed if Jihoon hadn't quickly grabbed her arm. Both of them felt that their relationship was evolving from a partnership to something more, but neither of them was the first to voice that emotion. The wall of reality from their contractual marriage and the threat still surrounding them made them cautious. Now, explain. What is this situation? Then, one day, something unexpected happened. Yujin logged into her personal cloud server, which she hadn't used for a long time, to find some project-related files. It was the same server she had been using since her time at Daehan Group, set up for her by her grandfather, Chairman Han. While searching for files, she found a strange folder named Archive. Curious, she clicked on it, but it was locked with a complex password. Jihoon's voice was still devoid of emotion, but it carried a sharp wariness. He sat Yujin on the sofa and stood a few steps away, observing her. His gaze was like a keen blade, making Yujin feel as if every part of her was being stripped bare. Normally, she would have just moved on. But for some reason, that folder bothered her today. Just in case, she tried a few combinations of numbers related to her grandfather as a password, her birthday, her parents' death anniversary, the group's founding anniversary. After a few failed attempts, she casually typed in the scientific name of the orchid her grandfather cherished the most. The path was blocked. Click. The password was miraculously accepted, and the folder opened. Inside the folder was a single encrypted file. The file name was PJT Phoenix. The Phoenix Project. Yujin tilted her head. She had no recollection of Daehan Group ever working on a project with such a name. She tried to open the file, but a secondary password blocked her access. Yujin found herself blurting out a clumsy excuse. But the moment the words left her mouth, she realized how foolish her explanation was. No one would believe that the path was blocked on a 44th floor balcony. That night, Yujin told Jihoon about what she found. It might be nothing, just an old file, but for some reason, it's bothering me. A faint, cold smirk passed over Jihoon's lips. The path was blocked, so you climbed down the side of the hotel. That's an interesting way to go. Jihoon took the tablet PC she handed him and carefully examined the file name PJT Phoenix. His expression tightened subtly. Phoenix? Yujin's face flushed at his sarcastic tone. Shame and anger surged within her at the same time. She lifted her head and met Jihoon's gaze directly. She couldn't just stand there trembling in fear. He fell into deep thought for a moment, then went into his study and took out an old folder. It was covered in a thick layer of dust and had a label that read, Unresolved Case Files. It's none of your business, and thank you for hiding me. But now please let me go my way. It was about 10 years ago. A massive slush fund scandal shook the business and political world. Several large corporations were involved, and the rumor was that Daehan Group was at the center of it. Just as the prosecution's investigation was about to get serious, the key witness suddenly died in a mysterious car accident, and all related documents vanished. In the end, Daehan Group only punished a few employees, and the investigation was concluded without resolution. The code name for that case was the Phoenix Project. Your way down there, where bodyguards are all over the place, or would you prefer to climb back up that rope? Jihoon gestured toward the balcony with his chin. From what I can see, you have nowhere to go. Yujin's heart sank. Then, this file? His words hit their mark with perfect accuracy. Yujin bit her lip. Each of his words felt like a dagger, piercing straight to the core of her situation. She was in a perfect bind. It's highly likely that this is the very evidence that disappeared 10 years ago. Jihoon's eyes sharpened. Your grandfather hid that secret on your personal server, which he thought was the safest place. No one would suspect his granddaughter's private space. Jihoon watched her for a moment, then picked up a whiskey bottle from the table and poured a glass. The clear clinking of ice cubes heightened the tension in the room. In an instant, all the puzzle pieces clicked into place. Yujin felt as if she had been hit in the head. No way! So that's why he was trying to marry me off to Lee Min-hyuk, and I don't like unknown individuals entering my space, especially when that individual brings all sorts of commotion with them. He slowly swirled the whiskey in his glass. I'll give you two choices. First, you leave this room and get caught by them right now. Second, you tell me everything honestly, and I guarantee your safety for the night. That's right, Ji-hoon confirmed her thoughts. SJ Group has a powerful influence in the legal world. As a precaution, he needed the most secure shield to fend off the prosecution and the judiciary. Your marriage to Lee Min-hyuk wasn't just a simple corporate merger. It was a kind of insurance, a way to bury Daehan Group's ugly secret forever. Why are you trying to help me? Yujin asked, her voice trembling. Yujin felt all the strength drain from her body, and she collapsed onto the sofa. The moment she realized that she was just a tool for her grandfather's ambition and a sacrifice to protect his ugly secret, an unbearable sense of betrayal and emptiness washed over her. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I'm not helping you. I'm offering a deal. Ji-hoon took a sip of whiskey. I dislike uncertain situations that are outside my control. You, by entering my hotel and my room and disrupting my time, are uncertainty itself. I need to know your identity so I can decide my next course of action. This is purely for my own benefit. Ji-hoon quietly came and sat next to her, putting his arm around her shoulder. He didn't say anything, but his warm touch comforted her cold sorrow. After patting her back for a long time, he spoke in a low voice. His answer was shockingly honest and selfish. But strangely, Yujin found a glimmer of trust in his sincerity. The fact that his actions were based on a thorough calculation rather than pity or kindness put her at ease. At least this man wouldn't be capricious and swayed by emotions. Now, everything is clear. Why Lee Min-hyuk is so obsessed with you and why he's trying to destroy TK Group. He's not just seeking revenge for the broken engagement. He knows that as long as you're by my side, this secret is a ticking time bomb that could go off at any moment. He'll try to get you back, or he'll try to get rid of you to protect this secret. Yujin sighed deeply. She made up her mind. All right, I'll tell you. Yujin's body trembled at his words. The situation was far more serious and dangerous than she had thought. At her answer, Ji-hoon silently nodded and sat on the sofa across from her. It was time to reveal everything. Yujin didn't know where to start, but she slowly opened her mouth. She told him her name, that she was the granddaughter of Daehan Group, her scheduled political marriage to Lee Min-hyuk the next day, and that she had run away, abandoning everything for her dream of being an architect. What should we do now? Throughout her story, Ji-hoon listened in silence, not saying a single word. His expression remained unchanged, making it impossible to guess what he was thinking. Yujin worried that her story was too unrealistic for him to believe, but his eyes never wavered. Ji-hoon wiped her tears with his hand and looked straight into her eyes. His gaze was firmer and more resolute than ever. There are two paths. Delete this file forever and live as if you never knew anything. Or crack the password of this file and reveal the truth to the world. When she had finished, silence once again filled the room. Yujin waited nervously for his reaction. He held her hand tightly. Whatever path you choose, I will be with you. But let me be clear about one thing. The path to revealing the truth will be very difficult and dangerous. We might have to face Daehan Group and SJ Group, as well as the powerful forces hiding behind them. Even your grandfather could become your enemy. After a long pause, Ji-hoon finally spoke. Chairman Han of Daehan Group. Not a very interesting story. His voice was still dry. But I understand your predicament well enough. Yujin met his gaze. She was afraid, but she couldn't turn away from the truth and live in a false peace. That would be selling her soul. Hadn't she sworn not to live as someone's puppet anymore and to carve out her own life? He rose from his seat and walked to the window. Standing with his back to the night view, he looked like a giant shadow. I'll do it. As promised, I will guarantee your safety for tonight. I will handle the bodyguards. So do not leave this room, not even for a step. Yujin's voice was trembling, but it carried an iron will. I'll reveal the truth. I won't run or hide anymore. Handle them how... At her answer, a faint smile finally appeared on Ji-hoon's face. He respected her choice and was proud of her. Good. Then, let's start our second contract now. That's my business. Ji-hoon cut her off. You just need to stay quiet. And tomorrow morning, when it's light out, you can leave and go wherever you want. Our deal ends there. He got up and brought his laptop. I've contacted the best hacker in the world I know to crack this file's password, and I plan to contact an accomplice with a conscience who still remains within Dehan Group. You must pretend to be only focused on the Elysian Complex project so no one suspects anything. This will be a completely secret operation. His words drew a clear line. It meant no further relationship, no further help. Yujin was okay with that. She, too, did not want unnecessary pity or entanglement. From that moment on, they became more than just partners. They became allies, bound by fate. A secret war began to reveal the truth against a great evil. Without even having a chance to confirm their feelings of love for each other, they were stepping together into a dangerous whirlpool where their lives were at stake. Their contractual marriage was now opening the curtains to a war for the truth. Thank you, Yujin said with genuine sincerity. A few days after the secret war for the truth began, Kang Ji-hoon and Han Yujin moved meticulously in their respective positions. Ji-hoon contacted a hacker and sought out an accomplice within Daehan Group, while Yujin perfectly directed the Elysian Complex project to block any suspicion from the outside. The penthouse study became their secret war room every night. Despite the precarious tension, their bond, strengthened by a shared goal, grew deeper with each passing day. Ji-hoon did not respond, instead calling his secretary to give a brief and concise command. His authority was absolute. Moments later, the hotel manager himself came up to apologize to Ji-hoon, and the commotion from the floor above vanished as if it had never been there. Yujin could vaguely guess the extent of his power, but they had overlooked one thing, that their enemy was far more cunning and cruel than they had imagined. With everything settled, Ji-hoon led Yujin to a guest room. Everything you need is inside. Rest well. In the Daehan Group chairman's office, Chairman Han glared at a small USB on his desk. Next to him, Lee Min-hyuk stood with a satisfied smile. My prediction was correct. Chairman Han Yujin, that woman, accessed your server. The tracking program we embedded in the server sent an immediate alert. With that, he went into his own bedroom. Left alone, Yujin stood in the unfamiliar space for a long time. Just a few hours ago, she had been despairing in a suite that felt like a prison. But now, thanks to a man she didn't know, she was in a safe place. It all felt like a dream. Chairman Han's face hardened. He was furious that his granddaughter had meddled with his secret vault, but he also had a cynical expression, as if he had expected it. The brazen thing, just like her father, she's stubborn and has a useless curiosity. She's digging her own grave. She dragged her tired body to the shower. The warm water washed away all the tension in her body. When she came out, a new set of clothes in her size and a light meal were laid out on the bed. She was surprised again by his thoughtful consideration. It was unexpected to find such a side to a man she had thought was cold and selfish. What will you do now? Min-hyuk asked. She and that Kang Ji-hoon will try to uncover the truth of the Phoenix Project. We can't waste any more time. Yujin lay down on the soft bed. The extreme tension had worn off, and sleep was overwhelming. But before she fell asleep, the image of Kang Ji-hoon came to mind. His cold eyes, his indifferent tone, but the strong arms that had saved her in a moment of crisis. What kind of person was he? She had thought their connection would end with a one-night deal, but she had a strange feeling it wouldn't be that simple. The gears of fate had already begun to turn, irreversibly. Chairman Han closed his eyes for a moment, deep in thought. The experience and strategy he had accumulated for decades as a shrewd old chairman flashed through his mind. He opened his eyes and made a cruel decision. To catch a snake, you have to lure it out of its hole, but a better way is to make the snakes bite each other. He turned to Min-hyuk. Find the most certain way to drive a wedge between Kang Ji-hoon and my granddaughter. Trust is like glass. Once it's cracked, it can never go back to its original state. The next morning, Seoul was in an uproar. Min-hyuk's eyes gleamed with a cunning light, as if he had been waiting for this. He opened his mouth. Of course, Chairman, I have a perfect plan already prepared. Han Yujin's disappearance was not just gossip, it was a bombshell dropped on the heart of the business world. The engagement ceremony between two of Korea's largest conglomerates, Daehan Group and SJ Group, dubbed the marriage of the century, was scheduled for today. The unprecedented incident of the bride vanishing from an event that had the attention of all the media and public had occurred. Their trap was incredibly elaborate and vicious. A few days later, Kang Ji-hoon went on a 3-day business trip to Europe for an urgent meeting with international investors. Coincidentally, as soon as he left, a mysterious package was delivered to Yujin. It was a plain envelope with no sender's name or address. The breaking news tickers were filled with sensational headlines like Daehan Group's Han Yujin missing on engagement day and Marriage of the Century cancelled, Business World in shock. Reporters swarmed the Daehan Group headquarters, Chairman Han's residence, and the hotel where the ceremony was to be held, all day. The real-time search rankings on internet portals were dominated by the names Han Yujin, Lee Minhyuk, and the two groups. Yujin felt a strange sense of foreboding but opened the envelope to check the contents. Inside were a USB and a few documents. She plugged the USB into her laptop. A single audio file appeared on the screen. The stock market reacted immediately. The stock prices of both Daehan Group and SJ Group began to plummet the moment the market opened. Disappointed investors who had expected a synergy from the merger rushed to sell their shares, and the uncertainty spiraled out of control. The moment she clicked on the file, a very familiar voice came out. It was Kang Ji-hoon's voice. In the midst of all this chaos, Chairman Han was having a hellish time in the Daehan Group chairman's office. In front of him stood the group's key executives, the chief secretary, and the head of the security team, all with their heads bowed in shame. Oh yes, everything is going according to plan. That woman, Han Yujin, seems to trust me completely. Once I get my hands on the Phoenix Project file, taking over Daehan Group is only a matter of time. She's just a stupid fish who took the bait we threw. When she's no longer useful, we'll throw her away without a second thought. You still haven't found her. The audio file was cleverly edited, like a conversation between Kang Ji-hoon and his secretary. The tone of his voice, his manner of speaking, and even the faint background noises were perfectly manipulated, leaving no room for doubt. Chairman Han's roar tore through the heavy air of the office. His bloodshot eyes glowed as if they were about to swallow someone whole. The shrewd old chairman who had led the group with cool-headedness and charisma, his entire life was now a man who had lost all reason. Yujin's mind went blank. She almost dropped the laptop in her hand. No, this can't be true. He wouldn't do this. She desperately tried to deny it, but her heart had already frozen solid. We apologize. Chairman, we have checked every CCTV in Seoul and deployed every available person to search. But, with trembling hands, she looked at the documents that came with the USB. The documents looked like internal confidential files of TK Group. They contained a hostile M&A scenario for Daehan Group and a detailed plan to use the Phoenix Project file to blackmail Chairman Han and seize control of the company. Kang Ji-hoon's forged signature was on every document. Before the security team leader could finish, a heavy crystal ashtray flew and shattered at his feet. All the evidence pointed to one person, Kang Ji-hoon, the man she had trusted and relied on, the man who had comforted her wounds and supported her dreams. Was all of it a lie? Were his kindness, his care, and the warmth in his eyes all a meticulously crafted performance to use her? I didn't call you here to listen to excuses. Find her by the end of today. Even if the sky falls, whether she's buried underground or soared into the sky, bring her back to me by any means necessary. Yujin sank onto the sofa, burying her face in her knees. Tears poured down. A pain greater than when her grandfather betrayed her tore at her heart. It was the sound of her last bit of faith in the world shattering. His rage was not just because of his granddaughter's impulsive act. This political marriage was a matter of utmost importance for the future of Daehan Group. In recent years, the group's main businesses had stagnated, and the crisis was looming as they failed to find a new growth engine. The merger with SJ Group was his last gamble to overcome all these difficulties and once again reign as the absolute powerhouse in the industry. But all those plans were now on the verge of being ruined in a single night. For the next 2 days, she lived through hell. Ji-hoon called her several times, but she couldn't bring herself to answer. She was afraid that his voice would make her fall apart completely. Trapped in the penthouse, she endlessly wandered between the happy memories with him and the cruel evidence in front of her. The bigger problem was his pride. To a man who had lived his whole life for his pride and honor, this incident was a humiliation. The thought that the entire Korean business world was laughing at him filled him with an unbearable sense of insult. And finally, the day Ji-hoon returned from his business trip, he looked tired, but the moment he saw Yujin, a bright smile appeared on his face as he walked toward her. He held out a small gift box for her. I bought this because I thought you'd like it. Meanwhile, Lee Min-hyuk of SJ Group, the other victim of the situation, was watching the TV news in his penthouse, his hands trembling with rage. On the screen, his face and Han Yujin's were side by side, and all sorts of speculative news reports ran rampant. Headlines like "The Real Reason for the Broken Engagement" and "Lee Min-hyuk's Secret Woman" were flooding the news. But Yujin did not take the gift. She only looked up at him with cold, empty eyes. At her reaction, Ji-hoon's smile faded. "What's wrong? Are you sick?" "How dare she, humiliate me? Lee Min-hyuk?" "Stop acting." He threw the wine glass in his hand at the fireplace. The glass shattered, and the red wine spread like blood on the white marble. He had never been rejected. He had gotten everything he wanted, and everything was at his feet. And now he had been publicly humiliated by a woman whose name he could barely remember. His pride was torn to shreds. Yujin's voice was as cold as ice. She threw the USB and documents he had sent onto the table. "Was this your true intention to use me to take over Daehan Group? Did I seem that pathetic and easy to you? Hi, Han Yujin. I will find you and make you kneel at my feet. And that pathetic dream you so desperately wanted to protect. I will personally trample it with my own hands." Ji-hoon's expression hardened when he saw the evidence on the table, but he didn't panic. He instantly knew that this was a trap set by someone. Everything was quickly being reconstructed in his mind. His eyes gleamed with hatred and a thirst for revenge. "This is a trap. Yujin, I don't know who did this." But at that very moment, in the eye of the storm, in the calm of Kang Ji-hoon's penthouse, Han Yujin opened her eyes in the guest room. The unfamiliar ceiling and soft bedding. It didn't take long for her to realize that what happened last night wasn't a dream. She slowly got up and went to the living room. Morning sunlight streamed in through the huge glass windows. "A trap!" Yujin laughed in disbelief. "My voice, your signature, all of this is a trap. Are you going to keep treating me like a fool until the very end?" Kang Ji-hoon was already sitting on the sofa, watching the news on his tablet PC. His expression was as indifferent as ever. But Yujin instantly knew that the main character of the news he was watching was herself. "Please believe me, I have never used you. Not even for a second." Ji-hoon tried to approach her, but Yujin stepped back, avoiding him. "You're awake. Don't come near me. You disgust me." Ji-hoon looked up at Yujin and spoke. At his gaze, Yujin involuntarily flinched. Her words were a sharp dagger that pierced Ji-hoon's heart. For the first time, a look of deep hurt and pain crossed his face. He was more heartbroken by the pain she must be feeling than by her suspicion of him. "The world is in an uproar because of you. You've done a great job, enough to cut Daehan Group's stock price in half. Please, just look into my eyes and tell me, what do you think of me?" he said in a desperate voice. "Do you think every moment I showed you was just an act?" There was no blame or pity in his tone. He was simply stating a factual observation. Yujin picked up the newspaper from the table. The headline, "Bride of the Century, Missing," and a huge photo of herself on the front page caught her eye. Her heart sank. She hadn't expected things to blow up this much. Her grandfather's wrath, Lee Min-hyuk's fury, and all the people who were in chaos because of her. Guilt and fear washed over her like a tidal wave. Yujin couldn't meet his eyes. His gaze was too sincere, and it shook her conviction. But the evidence in front of her was too clear. She didn't know what to believe. Her mind was screaming that he was a liar, but her heart was begging for it not to be true. "What are you going to do now?" "I don't know anymore. I don't know anything anymore." Yujin couldn't answer Ji-hoon's question. She had no plan. She had vaguely thought that if she could just avoid this marriage, everything would be solved. But reality was different. She was now the most famous runaway in South Korea, with nowhere to go and no one to lean on. She finally broke down. She ran to her room, leaving Ji-hoon behind, and locked the door. With a single door separating them, the two people were sinking into a deep abyss of despair and misunderstanding. "You'll probably be caught in less than half a day. Do you know who Chairman Han is? Finding his granddaughter is nothing for him." Ji-hoon was brutally honest. "What will happen if you're caught? The wedding will likely be forced upon you with more thorough surveillance. Or you might be stripped of everything and exiled to some country abroad for bringing shame to the family's honor." Left alone, Ji-hoon clenched his fists. His nails dug into his palms, making him bleed, but he didn't feel the pain. In his heart, a burning rage at the unseen enemy who had orchestrated this and a profound sorrow for Eugen's pain were raging. Each of his words was a dagger of reality. Eugen's face turned pale. Lee Min-hyuk's and Chairman Han's plot seemed to have succeeded perfectly. A fatal crack had formed in the trust between the two people who were supposed to be the strongest. Now, their alliance was in a precarious state, where it could shatter at any moment. The enemies were smiling in the dark, waiting for their complete downfall. The air in the penthouse was suffocatingly cold. With a tightly closed door separating them, Han Eugen and Kang Ji-hoon were isolated on their own islands. Eugen was trapped in her room, nursing the wounds of betrayal, and Ji-hoon sat on the living room sofa, staying up all night, swallowing his anger and helplessness. The castle of trust they had built together seemed to have collapsed helplessly with a single, cleverly thrown stone by their enemies. "You have no choice!" Ji-hoon interrupted her. He turned off the tablet PC and faced Eugen. His eyes were more serious than ever. As time passed, another emotion began to rise in Eugen's heart. Besides sadness and anger, it was doubt. As an architect, she was always trained to analyze phenomena with logic and reason. After the emotional storm had passed, her cold-headed reason was slowly waking up. "So, I'm going to offer you a deal." She opened her laptop and re-examined the manipulated audio file and documents. The first time she heard it, she was in a state of shock and couldn't distinguish anything. But after listening and reading it over and over again, she began to feel a subtle sense of incongruity. Kang Ji-hoon's voice in the audio file was perfect, but it felt somewhat mechanical, lacking emotion. And the M&A plan for Daehan Group was too audacious and clumsy. The Kang Ji-hoon she knew was a meticulous and cautious strategist who would not tolerate even 1% of risk. He would never have made such a reckless plan. A deal. Once a small crack appeared, the doubt grew uncontrollably, like a river breaking through a dam. Maybe it really was a trap. Maybe all the kindness and sincerity he had shown her were much closer to the truth than this clumsy evidence. She decided she could no longer hide in this room and suffer alone. The truth had to be found by facing it head-on. "Marry me, Han Eugen." Meanwhile, Ji-hoon had spent sleepless nights sharpening his sword for a counterattack. He didn't resent Eugen. It was only natural for her to be shaken by such a meticulously crafted piece of evidence. His rage was directed only at the mastermind behind all of this. He immediately contacted the world-renowned hacker he had hired and requested an analysis of the manipulated evidence. And he mobilized all of TK Group's security teams to trace the origin of the mysterious package. For a moment, Eugen doubted her own ears. A moment ago, she had been running away from a political marriage, and now another man was proposing to her. It was so absurd she almost laughed. When Eugen finally opened her door, Ji-hoon was in his study, surrounded by countless monitors with bloodshot eyes. Several empty coffee cups, a sign of his all-night work, were placed in front of him. He jumped up from his seat when he saw Eugen. "Are you kidding?" "Eugen, I'm not a man who jokes around." Ji-hoon's expression was deadly serious. "Of course, I don't mean a real marriage. It's a contractual marriage, on paper only." Eugen walked up to him without a word and picked up the gift box he had dropped. Then she carefully opened it. Inside the box was a delicate and beautiful fountain pen, named after an architect she admired. He had remembered something she had said in passing. A contractual marriage. "I'm sorry." "That's right." Ji-hoon stood up and walked toward Eugen. He stood in front of her, looking down. His tall frame cast a shadow over her. "You need a way to escape Chairman Han of Daehan Group. And I need an interesting card to keep Daehan Group in check." Our interests aligned perfectly. Eugen's voice trembled slightly. I couldn't trust you. Please, forgive me for doubting you." Even for a moment, Eugen tried to organize her chaotic thoughts. "What would be different if I married you? I'm still Han Eugen. And my grandfather will try to..." At her apology, all the pain and anger that had been on Ji-hoon's face melted away like snow. He walked up to her and embraced her tightly without a word. In his strong arms, Eugen finally shed tears of relief. The wall of misunderstanding had crumbled, and their trust was now stronger and more solid than before. "You would no longer be Han Eugen of Daehan Group, but the wife of Kang Ji-hoon of TK Group." Ji-hoon explained, "TK Group is not a group that Daehan Group can mess with easily. No matter how much Chairman Han rages, he can't forcibly drag away his granddaughter who has become the wife of a rival group's head. That would mean all-out war between the two groups." It's okay," Ji-hoon whispered, gently stroking her head. His words were convincing. TK Group. A new powerhouse that stood shoulder to shoulder with, or in some ways, surpassed Daehan Group. The weight of the name Kang Ji-hoon was more than she had imagined. Just then, an alert sounded on Ji-hoon's laptop. It was a message from the hacker. You would gain a perfect shield. From your grandfather and from Lee Min-hyuk, under the name of my wife, you can enjoy complete freedom. You can continue your architectural studies without anyone's interference. Analysis complete. The audio file is a sophisticated deepfake manipulated with deepfake technology. It appears to be a recomposition of audio extracted from Chairman Kang Ji-hoon's past speeches, interviews, and call records. The signature's handwriting is a perfect mimic, but a microcomponent analysis of the ink used shows that it was printed within the last 24 hours. The evidence is 100% fabricated. Freedom! That single word strongly shook Yoojin's heart. It was what she had longed for. The truth was revealed. They looked at each other. The relief was short-lived, and a cold fire of rage ignited in their eyes. Their enemies had not just tried to create a rift between them. They had tried to destroy their relationship, their trust, and everything they had. Then what do you get? There's no such thing as a free lunch, Yoojin asked, not letting her guard down. Lee Min-hyuk. And my grandfather. Yoojin bit her lip. It must be a plot by both of them. For the first time, a faint smile appeared on Ji-hoon's lips. Of course not. I'm not a philanthropist. First, I can prevent the merger between Daehan Group and SJ Group. If the two groups merge, they will become a very annoying rival to TK Group. Your disappearance has already made the merger unstable. But if you become my wife, they will lose all justification to get back together. This is a huge gain for me. We will not stand by and take it anymore. Ji-hoon's voice was as cold and resolute as steel. They have declared war on us. So we will respond. In the most terrifying way they can imagine. He paused to gauge Yoojin's reaction. And second, this is a more personal reason. But I've been annoyed with all the blind dates my family has been setting up for me. Thanks to you, I can live in peace for a while. At that very moment, another miracle happened. The accomplice within Daehan Group, whom Ji-hoon had been so desperately searching for, finally contacted him. He was a longtime employee in Chairman Han's secretarial office, who felt guilty about the chairman's corruption and could no longer tolerate it. He sent Ji-hoon an encrypted message. Everything was a thorough calculation. There was not a single % of emotion mixed in with his proposal. Only business necessity and gain existed. But that very fact made Yoojin hesitate. If it was a deal without emotions, might it be safer? The final password is a son's tears. It is the one thing the chairman regrets. The contract period is 1 year. During that time, we will respect each other's private lives and not disclose the contract to the outside world. After 1 year, we will divorce quietly. I will give you a severance package that will satisfy you. What do you think? It's not a bad deal, is it? A son's tears. It referred to Yoojin's father. Yoojin's father had been against Chairman Han's autocratic management style and was eventually kicked out of the group, and he passed away from a stress-related illness. Her grandfather had never apologized for his son's death, but deep down, he had felt guilty. Ji-hoon extended his hand to Yoojin. His proposal was as sweet as the devil's temptation. After escaping one prison, another bigger and more extravagant one was waiting for her. But this prison had the name Freedom. Yoojin's hands trembled as she typed the password into the laptop. Son's tears. Yoojin looked from his extended hand to his face. In a world where she was surrounded by enemies, taking this man's hand seemed like her only way out. Was this the right choice? Was she pushing her life into yet another whirlpool? In the middle of a sea raging with a violent storm, she had to make a crucial decision on a fragile rowboat. The moment she pressed the enter key, the PJT Phoenix file, which had been tightly locked, finally opened. On the screen, Daehan Group's ugly secrets, recorded over several decades, unfolded endlessly. Secret ledgers, slush fund details, a list of lobbyists in the political world, and even a recording file containing the truth of the incident from 10 years ago. It was a nuclear bomb with enough power to shake South Korea to its core. The hand Kang Ji-hoon extended to Han Yoojin was not just a simple proposal. It was both a salvation and another form of confinement. The only lifeline she found at the end of despair. In her head, tens of thousands of thoughts clashed. Her grandfather's enraged face, Lee Min-hyuk's contemptuous eyes, and the sweet word, freedom. On one side of the scale were an unpredictable future and danger, and on the other, the hellish reality she would have to return to. The choice was clear. The two people silently looked at the screen. All the preparations were complete. The knife of revenge was sharp, and the time for judgment was approaching. All right. Next week, TK Group has its regular shareholders meeting, Jihoon said. It's a place where key figures from Daehan Group and SJ Group, as well as all the media, will be focused. Yoojin finally made up her mind. Raising her trembling hand to grasp his, the moment her small, cold hand was enveloped in his large, warm one, a strange sense of stability spread throughout her body. It was their first handshake and the beginning of a contract that would completely change their destiny. Yoojin looked into his eyes and nodded with resolve. That's where we'll end everything. A wise choice? They would no longer run or hide. They would crawl out of the darkness and face them head-on in the light. The final battle to bring down the empire of a great evil was about to begin. A satisfied smile passed over Jihoon's lips. He didn't let go of Yoojin's hand as he called his secretary again. On the day of the TK Group's shareholders meeting, the hotel ballroom was like a battlefield where all the attention of Korea's business and media was focused. Hundreds of camera flashes went off without a break, and reporters were desperate to capture every move of the bigwigs entering the ballroom. Secretary Kim, contact my personal lawyer immediately and have him prepare a draft of a marriage contract. Also, contact the district office and have them process the marriage registration as soon as possible. I'll send you the necessary documents. So have everything ready within 3 hours. Among them, the ones who received the most attention were undoubtedly Chairman Han of Daehan Group and Lee Min-hyuk of SJ Group. They entered the ballroom with an air of triumph, like victorious generals who had come to celebrate their victory. They were certain that Kang Jihoon and Han Yoojin's relationship had fallen apart, and they were filled with the thought of witnessing TK Group's downfall and toasting to their own victory. His commands were quick and precise. The secretary on the other end of the phone responded without any sign of confusion. Understood, Chairman. Yoojin was amazed by his quick and efficient handling of the situation. The Daehan Group she had lived in her whole life was a systematic organization, but the speed and efficiency of one man, Kang Jihoon, seemed to be on another level. A moment later, all the lights in the ballroom went out, and a huge screen on the podium lit up. Contrary to everyone's expectation that a video to announce the start of the meeting would be shown, a strange file appeared on the screen. The file name was PJT Phoenix. In less than an hour, Jihoon's personal lawyer arrived at the penthouse with the contract. The contents of the contract were exactly as Jihoon had stated. A 1-year contract. Mutual respect for privacy, confidentiality of the contract, and the amount of the severance payment at the end of the contract. The amount of the severance was an enormous sum, enough for Yoojin to live her entire life without ever having to work again. A murmur went through the ballroom. Chairman Han and Lee Min-hyuk's faces instantly hardened. Before they could even grasp the situation, a sharp voice echoed from all the speakers in the ballroom. If you have no objections, sign here. From now on, I will reveal the true history of Daehan Group. Jihoon pushed the contract, already signed by him, toward Yoojin. Yoojin hesitated for a moment, holding the pen. The moment her name was written with this pen, her life would cross an irreversible river, but she quickly steeled herself. The bridge back had already been burned. Without hesitation, she wrote her name, Han Yoojin. The moment those 3 letters were etched on the paper, she was no longer the granddaughter of Daehan Group but the contract wife of Kang Jihoon. The voice belonged to Han Yoojin. She and Kang Jihoon walked out from the back of the ballroom with a dignified air. The two were holding hands, and their eyes shone with a firm trust that would not waver in the face of any adversity. Lee Min-hyuk and Chairman Han looked at them as if they had seen ghosts. All procedures were carried out at a breakneck speed. Immediately after the lawyer left, a district office employee visited the penthouse to process the marriage registration documents. The law of South Korea recognized them as an official couple. All this had happened in just a few hours. Yoojin went up to the podium and took the microphone. Today, I stand here as an architect and as a witness to the ugly truth of Daehan Group. And it didn't take long for the news to reach the world. TK Group's public relations team officially announced Chairman Kang Jihoon's marriage. His new wife was Han Yoojin, the woman who had caused such a stir just a few days ago. This news brought a shockwave even greater than Yoojin's disappearance. The fact that the missing heiress married the head of a rival conglomerate, not her fiancé, the heir of SJ Group, was more dramatic than any scandalous drama. As soon as she finished speaking, the screen began to display the Phoenix Project's secret ledgers and slush fund details. One by one, the ballroom buzzed with shock and horror at the raw records of how an astronomical amount of money was created and who it was funneled to. The reporters were frantically pressing their camera shutters. The media was once again in a frenzy. All sorts of speculations and rumors poured out about their meeting and marriage. Sensational headlines like, "Is it a romance of the century or a business merger?" and "Kang Ji-hoon steals rival's granddaughter," adorned newspapers and television broadcasts. TK Group's stock price surged, while the stock prices of Daehan Group and SJ Group plummeted to an irreversible point. "It's a lie! It's all fabricated!" Chairman Han shouted, but his voice was powerless against the wave of the great truth. Upon hearing the news of the marriage in his office, Chairman Han slumped into his chair. He read the article over and over again in disbelief. A sense of emptiness beyond rage enveloped him. Not only had he been betrayed by his granddaughter, but he had also been perfectly humiliated by his lifelong rival, TK Group. He picked up the phone and shouted for his secretary to connect him to Kang Ji-hoon, but all he heard was the secretary's cold voice. "The chairman is with his wife right now and cannot take your call." The word wife was a dagger to his heart. Yoojin, unfazed, revealed the next piece of evidence. It was a recording of the last phone call made by the key witness who died in a mysterious car accident 10 years ago. The voice of him begging Chairman Han to cover up the truth was vividly heard from the file. Lee Min-hyuk was smashing everything in his office. Betrayal and humiliation had driven him mad. He could not tolerate the fact that the man Han Yoojin had chosen was Kang Ji-hoon. He had always seen Kang Ji-hoon as his biggest rival and was constantly aware of him. To have his fiancée stolen by him was the worst defeat and humiliation a man and a businessman could face. To cover all of this up, my grandfather tried to force me into a political marriage with Mr. Lee Min-hyuk of SJ Group. It was nothing more than an ugly deal to escape justice through the union of two families. Kang Ji-hoon, Han Yoojin, I won't let either of you off the hook. I will make you both regret this day. Finally, the screen showed a video of Lee Min-hyuk instructing someone to use deepfake technology to manipulate Kang Ji-hoon's voice and forge his signature. The surveillance camera Ji-hoon had installed beforehand had captured the entire crime. Lee Min-hyuk grew even more enraged as his attacks were blocked time and again, especially after he learned that Han Yoojin was at the center of it all. His rage bordered on madness. He began to prepare his next plan, one far more vicious and dangerous, targeting not TK Group but Han Yoojin herself. The real war was just beginning. The moment of truth was here. Chairman Han slumped into his chair with an empty expression, and Lee Min-hyuk, filled with rage, rushed toward the podium to attack Yoojin. But the one who blocked his way was Kang Ji-hoon. While the world was in an uproar over their marriage, the two people who had become husband and wife were having an awkward dinner in silence. The meal was on par with a top-tier restaurant, but they didn't say a word. Only the sound of forks and knives clinking against the plates could be heard. "Your opponent is me." Lee Min-hyuk flinched at Ji-hoon's cold gaze. At that moment, the ballroom doors opened, and prosecutors stormed in. They put cold handcuffs on Chairman Han and Lee Min-hyuk. The era of the two men, who had reigned at the pinnacle of the world, ended so pointlessly. "From now on, you'll be staying here. If you need anything, just tell Secretary Kim and he'll get it for you. Don't feel uncomfortable." The aftermath of the incident shook South Korea to its core. Daehan Group and SJ Group fell into a bottomless abyss. Their stock prices became worthless, and the related political figures were arrested one after another, throwing society into great chaos. Ji-hoon was the one who broke the silence. "You can use all the spaces freely, except for my study and bedroom. The room you'll be staying in is the guest room from yesterday." A few months later, Daehan Group transitioned to a professional management system and underwent a massive restructuring. Han Yoojin was at the center of it all. Although she was not directly involved in the group's management, she helped rebuild the group as an advisor to the emergency committee. She took the lead in clearing the past tainted with corruption and creating a transparent and ethical corporate culture. At her sincere efforts, the employees gradually opened their hearts and began to accept her as their new leader. His words were extremely businesslike, as if he were explaining the house rules to a roommate. Yujin nodded silently. She was also uncomfortable with the awkward situation. Everything was strange. This spacious and luxurious penthouse, and the man who had become her legal husband. Kang Ji-hoon quietly stood by her side. He mobilized his entire network to help rebuild Dehan Group and became her strongest support system whenever she was exhausted and struggled. And so, their bizarre cohabitation began. For the first few days, they treated each other as if the other didn't exist. Ji-hoon left for work at dawn and returned late at night, and Yujin spent most of her time in the guest room or the living room. When they did cross paths, they would only exchange a light nod without any further conversation. On a clear autumn day, the two were walking together in the Garden of Elysium, which was nearing completion. Just as Yujin had designed, the sunlight pouring through the honeycomb-shaped dome brightly lit the lush garden. But as time passed, Yujin began to notice subtle changes in her surroundings. One morning, she woke up to find that one wall of the guest room had been replaced by a gigantic bookshelf. The shelves were filled with art books and specialized texts by famous architects from all over the world. There were even rare books she had always wanted but couldn't find. I think it's time to end our contract. Yujin was the first to speak cautiously. Everything had returned to its place, so it was time to end their contractual marriage. But her heart felt heavy as she said the words. And on the desk, a high-quality professional drafting table and various design tools were perfectly set up. He had remembered her clumsy excuse about her dream of being an architect. Yujin felt a warmth in a corner of her heart. It was an unexpected act of kindness from a man she had thought was indifferent and cold. Ji-hoon stopped walking and turned to her. A mischievous smile appeared on his face. End the contract. What contract are you talking about? From that day on, Yujin picked up her pen again. She immersed herself in design, day and night. Her suppressed passion erupted like a volcano. Her sketchbook was quickly filled with new ideas and creative designs. She felt truly alive. Ji-hoon, too, was quietly watching Yujin's transformation. He would often return home late at night and peek through the lit-up guest room door on his way to his study. Yujin's focused appearance was more beautiful and brilliant than any woman he had ever seen. He began to realize that she was not just a rich girl who had grown up in a sheltered environment. She possessed a strong will that wouldn't break in the face of adversity, and an extraordinary talent that no one could match. The contract we made was for a 1-year marriage, but there are still a few months left until the year is over. Aren't there? He took one step closer to Yujin. His eyes were warmer and more sincere than ever. And I have no intention of breaking this contract. I'd like to extend it for life, if you don't mind. One night, Ji-hoon came home earlier than usual. As he walked through the living room, he found Yujin asleep on the sofa, with her sketchbook held against her chest. Dozens of sketches were scattered at her feet. He quietly approached and placed a blanket over her so she wouldn't wake up. Then he carefully gathered the scattered sketches from the floor. Yujin's heart began to pound wildly. What do you mean? He nonchalantly looked at one of the sketches, and at that moment, he froze. It wasn't just a simple sketch. It was an innovative solution to a problem with a multi-purpose cultural space project that TK Group had recently staked everything on. It pointed out the exact issues and proposed a revolutionary alternative. The problem with spatial efficiency that the existing design team had struggled with for months was perfectly solved from a completely different perspective. Ji-hoon gently took her two hands in his. I love you, Han Yujin. At his calm but sincere confession, tears welled up in Yujin's eyes. At first, I just thought of you as an interesting business partner, but I was impressed by your talent and fell for your courage, and I wanted to comfort your wounds. I can't imagine my life without you now. So, will you marry me for real? Not as a contract, but for love. He looked at the other sketches in disbelief. Every sketch was a testament to her genius. He finally realized that Han Yujin was a far greater jewel than he had ever imagined. She wasn't just a card to use against Dehan Group. She could become the secret weapon that would change the future of TK Group. He took out a small velvet box from his pocket and opened it. Inside the box was a diamond ring that sparkled brilliantly in the garden's sunlight. He looked down at Yujin's sleeping face, the shadow cast by her long eyelashes, her high nose, and her tightly closed lips. He felt a strange emotion for the first time as he looked at her peaceful face. It was curiosity, admiration, and maybe something more. A subtle crack began to form in his heart, which had been as cold as ice. Yujin no longer hesitated. She smiled broadly. tears streaming down her face. Yes, I will. The relationship that began as a contract was slowly moving in a different direction. The two people who had been indifferent to each other now began to be aware of each other's existence in their own worlds. The icy air of the penthouse was slowly warming up with a subtle excitement and tension. But there were still many mountains to climb in front of them. Lee Min-hyuk, who was sharpening the knife of revenge, and Daehin Group, who was watching for an opportunity. Their precarious contractual marriage was now about to face its true test. At her answer, Ji-hoon embraced her tightly and kissed her. Their relationship, which had begun with a dizzying fall on a dark night as she fled a political marriage, was now bearing the fruit of true love. The calm was nothing more than the lull before the storm. As the relationship between Han Yujin and Kang Ji-hoon began to subtly change, the anger of the abandoned man finally became a storm of revenge that began to rage toward them. After that, they achieved many things together. The Elysian complex became a new landmark of Seoul, and the name of architect Han Yujin became known worldwide. Kang Ji-hoon's TK Group stood tall as the absolute powerhouse in the industry. The SJ Group chairman's office was as cold as ice. Lee Min-hyuk stood in front of a huge glass window, looking down at his kingdom, but his eyes did not see the city's dazzling scenery. His mind was filled with the indifferent face of Kang Ji-hoon and the image of Han Yujin standing by his side. The sense of humiliation did not fade with time, but instead spread deeper like a poison that gnawed at his soul. But their greatest happiness was not their worldly success. It was the simple, everyday life of waking up next to each other every morning, eating dinner together, and supporting each other's dreams. They were the most perfect partners and the one and only love for each other. Is everything ready? The clever girl who had climbed a wall to refuse a political marriage had unknowingly fallen into the arms of Korea's top CEO. And there, she found true love. Fate sometimes brings the most brilliant gifts in the most desperate moments. He asked without turning around. The secretary, who was standing like a shadow behind him, bowed his head and replied, "Yes, Chairman. As you instructed, we have completed the analysis of TK Group's key projects and partners. We are ready to strike at the most vulnerable link." A cruel smile appeared on Min-hyuk's lips. "Good. Let's begin. Slowly, one by one. Tear down the things Kang Ji-hoon cherishes. Do not stop until he screams in agony and until that woman, Han Yujin, regrets her choice and kneels before me." His revenge was systematic and malicious. The first attack was aimed at a new international city development project that TK Group was ambitiously promoting. SJ Group began secretly buying shares in the local partner company involved in the project through an anonymous investment fund. And at a critical moment, they incited the partner company to suddenly declare a contract termination. Overnight, TK Group's project worth hundreds of billions of won was on the verge of collapsing, and its credibility among international investors was severely damaged. Kang Ji-hoon immediately went into emergency management mode. He practically lived at the office for days and nights, working to resolve the situation. Video conferences and emergency meetings continued without a break. The signs of fatigue were evident on his face, but his eyes were unwavering, becoming even harder, like steel. Yujin was watching all of this unfold through the news in the penthouse. TK Group's crisis was making headlines every day, and the rumor that SJ Group and Lee Min-hyuk were behind it was widespread. She felt a heavy sense of guilt pressing on her chest. All of this had started because of her. Kang Ji-hoon was enduring all these attacks because of his contract with her. She felt she could no longer hide like an observer. For several nights, she stayed up, analyzing all the materials related to TK Group's new international city project. As an architecture student, she saw the core problems of the situation and a few possible solutions that could be the key to resolving it. That night, Ji-hoon returned to the penthouse close to midnight. His shoulders were heavier than usual. Yujin was waiting for him in the living room. "I have something to say." Ji-hoon looked at her in surprise for a moment, then threw himself on the sofa with an indifferent expression. "Let's do it tomorrow. I'm tired." "No, we have to do it now." Yujin walked up to him and spread out the materials she had organized on the table. "It's about your new city project." Ji-hoon frowned. "It's not your concern." A sharp wariness was in his voice. He didn't want to drag Yujin into this fight. Before the terms of the contract to protect her, he knew that this was exactly what Lee Min-hyuk wanted. "No, it's my fault this started. I have a responsibility too." Yujin didn't back down. "Look at this." The biggest reason the local partner company gave for terminating the contract was to re-examine the business's profitability. The problems they pointed out were the pedestrian traffic flow between the residential and commercial areas and the inefficient energy system design. These were actually problems that had been raised since the beginning of the project. She began to show Jihoon the sketches and blueprints she had drawn all night. What if we change the layout of the residential area and create a large park with an artificial lake in the center to connect the commercial facilities naturally? This could solve the traffic flow problem. And if we install next-generation solar panels on the rooftops and exterior walls of the buildings and introduce a geothermal heating and cooling system, we can drastically improve energy efficiency. This isn't just an alternative, it's a revolutionary design that can increase the project's value many times over. Jihoon listened to her explanation with skepticism at first, but soon he became deeply engrossed in the content. Her ideas were not just a student's doodles. They were bold and creative enough that even a veteran architect with a lot of experience would not have come up with them easily. He realized that the sketches he had found in the living room were not a simple coincidence. If we apply this design and create a new business plan, we can attract new investors with even better terms than the existing partners. We can turn this crisis into an opportunity. Yujin's eyes were shining with passion. Jihoon stared at her for a moment. The sparkle returned to his tired eyes. Secretary Kim, he immediately called his secretary. Emergency call to the entire strategic planning and design teams to come to the office right now. And based on Han Yujin's ideas, create a new business plan. Even if you have to work all night, I want the report on my desk by tomorrow morning. That night, the penthouse study became TK Group's temporary war room. Yujin stepped into Jihoon's study for the first time. The room was as clean and functional as his personality, with no frills. Through a video conference, Yujin shared her ideas with TK Group's key personnel and answered their questions without hesitation. The employees, who had at first eyed her with suspicion because she was the chairman's wife, began to be impressed by her vast knowledge and sharp insights. Throughout the meeting, Jihoon watched everything from a corner. He saw a new kind of charm in Yujin, who was not intimidated by the experts and logically presented her opinions. She was no longer a fragile being to be protected. She was an equal partner who could fight by his side. By the time the sun rose after the all-night meeting, TK Group's new urban development plan was finally complete. It was a blueprint far more innovative and attractive than the original plan. But Lee Min-hyuk's attacks did not stop there. He began to shake TK Construction, TK Group's main subsidiary. He lured away key personnel from TK Construction with the promise of high salaries and positions while spreading malicious rumors in the media that an apartment building being constructed by TK Construction had serious flaws. The rumors spread like wildfire. Protests from apartment buyers poured in, and the company's stock price plummeted once again. This time, Yujin stepped up again. She volunteered to go to the construction site herself to check the problems and meet with the buyers to persuade them. Jihoon was against it at first, saying it was too dangerous. But he couldn't break her firm will. Yujin put on a hard hat and personally inspected the construction site, meticulously checking each of the problems raised by the rumors. And she used all her architectural knowledge to write a report that proved how absurd the rumors were. She stood directly in front of the angry buyers and calmly countered their claims with professional data and evidence, reassuring them. Her sincere attitude and professionalism gradually calmed the buyers' agitation. Lee Min-hyuk's repeated attacks brought a crisis to TK Group. But ironically, they served as an opportunity to solidify the relationship between Yujin and Jihoon. They were no longer just a contract couple. They were becoming the most trusted allies and partners facing a common enemy, working all night to overcome the crisis and celebrating small victories together. They began to rely on each other deeply without even realizing it. His proposal was like an irresistible trap. Yujin hesitated for a moment. How could she trust this man? Who was he? And why was he trying to help her? But she had no other choice. The moment she went outside, she would be dragged back to that hellish reality. Under a sky as dark as pitch, the lights of Seoul glittered like stars on the ground, illuminating the city's heart. Among them, in the highest and most extravagant VVIP hotel suite, Han Yujin was trapped. The room was filled with the finest furniture and art, a testament to her status. But to Yujin, it was nothing more than an elaborately crafted prison. The city's night view, visible through the window, only intensified her yearning for freedom. In the process of fending off Lee Min-hyuk's attacks, Han Yujin's role was no longer confined to Kang Ji-hoon's penthouse. Her name began to spread quietly but quickly within TK Group. At first, she was known only as the chairman's mysterious wife. But as it became known that she had played a decisive role in resolving the New City project and the construction site incidents, the gaze toward her changed from curiosity to admiration and respect. Tomorrow, she was scheduled to become engaged to Lee Min-hyuk, the heir of Daehan Group, a political marriage born from the intertwined interests of two powerful families. Yujin's will had never once been considered. In the face of her grandfather, Chairman Han's absolute command, she was merely a granddaughter who had to obey, a tool for the family's benefit. But the stage where Yujin's true value would explode was yet to come. It was the largest project since TK Group's founding and a downtown cultural complex that Kang Ji-hoon had staked everything on. The Elysian Complex. Yujin stood by the window, resting her forehead against the cold glass. The reflection of herself in the pane felt strange. An expensive silk dress, perfectly styled hair, and expertly applied makeup. But the eyes beneath it were empty, as if they had lost all their light. She had wanted to be an architect. She dreamed of creating beautiful spaces with her own designs, but that dream was on the verge of shattering, bound by the weight of the name Han Yujin and the shackles of being the granddaughter of Daehan Group. The Elysian Complex was not just a simple building. It was a futuristic space combining art, technology, and nature that would become Seoul's new landmark, a symbolic project that would elevate TK Group's status to the next level. The world's top architects and design teams were brought in, but the project had been stalled for months due to a roadblock in a key area. I can't let it end like this. The problem was the design of the massive atrium at the center of the building, a space called the Garden of Elysium. The design team wanted to create an indoor garden that would remain green all year round under a huge dome structure made of glass and steel. However, the columns supporting the dome's weight obstructed the view, and the complex lighting and energy efficiency issues made it difficult to find a solution. A soft whisper broke the silence. The look in her eyes slowly began to change. The emptiness vanished, replaced by a cold, firm resolve. She was no longer a fragile doll succumbing to her fate. For the past few days, she had pretended to obediently follow all the preparations, but in her mind, she was meticulously crafting an escape plan. That evening, Ji-hoon was in his study receiving a bleak report from the head of the design team and other executives. We apologize. Chairman, we've run multiple simulations, but with current technology, it's difficult to satisfy both structural stability and aesthetic beauty at the same time. We might have to reevaluate the project from scratch. The door was locked, and bodyguards assigned by her grandfather watched her like shadows in the hallway. Escaping through the main entrance was impossible. Yujin's gaze shifted to the spacious balcony on one side of the room, 45 stories up. It was a dizzying height, but it was her only way out. Ji-hoon's forehead furrowed at the team leader's words. The delay of this project meant enormous losses for the entire group. Just then, Yujin, who had been quietly bringing in tea, overheard their conversation. She hesitated outside the door for a moment, then carefully walked in. She quickly scanned the room. She went into the bedroom and retrieved 2 thick, high-quality cotton sheets. Returning to the living room, she pulled hard on a massive velvet curtain. It tore from the rail with a dull sound, but the soundproof suite prevented the noise from escaping. I'm sorry, but may I take a look at the blueprint for a moment? Without a moment's hesitation, Yujin began tearing the sheets and curtains into long strips. Her movements were fast and precise. She never imagined that her knowledge of structural mechanics from her architecture studies would be useful in a moment like this. Calculating the optimal strength needed to support her body weight, she carefully wove each knot. Sweat trickled down her chin, but she didn't even think to wipe it. Only her desperate longing for survival and freedom dominated her every sense. All eyes in the study turned to her. The head of the design team made a blatantly displeased face. He was one of the best architects in Korea, with great pride in his area of expertise. To him, the chairman's wife's meddling seemed like an amateur's clumsy interference. After what felt like hours, she finally finished a sturdy-looking rope, much longer than her height. Yujin tied one end securely to a heavy marble balcony railing. She pulled on it several times to confirm its safety before finally letting out a sigh of relief. Madam, this is not a simple drawing. It's a professional field involving complex structural mechanics and laws of physics. She went back inside and changed into a comfortable black t-shirt and pants. She threw the expensive dress into a corner with a look of contempt. In a small backpack, she packed a minimal amount of cash, her ID, and her most cherished fountain pen for drafting. This was all she had. His tone was sharp, but Yujin wasn't intimidated. She looked at Jihoon. Jihoon silently nodded, giving his permission. He already knew her potential and was watching the situation with interest. Stepping back onto the balcony, Yujin took a deep breath of the cool night air. Her heart pounded wildly, but a strange sense of liberation washed over her. She looked down. Cars moved like toys far below. For a moment, she felt dizzy, but she shook her head to clear her mind. Everything would be over if she faltered here. Yujin approached the blueprint spread out on the large table. She carefully examined the blueprint for a few minutes, then picked up a pen and began to quickly sketch something on a blank sheet of paper. Her movements were fluid, as if she was simply transferring a picture that had been in her head for a long time.